welcome to the Couple Money Podcast. Usually when someone comes on the show, it's after they've reached a goal. Maybe they've paid off all their debt, they saved up for a dream, or they figured out how to manage their money together. Today, it's a little different. Audrey's on the show while she and her husband are in the middle of a huge transition, talking financial, career, life, everything. He was working as a sound engineer, a job that took him all around the world, living the rock star life. Now, they're slowing things down and he's about to embark on another career, one that may be less lucrative, but rewarding. In part one, in this two-part show, we'll get into working through big changes and having those conversations as a couple, finding a balance when your finances change drastically, and appreciating what matters most. Working together can be wonderful and a way for the two of you to draw closer, but that doesn't always mean it's easy. I think you'll really enjoy this episode. Larryuricana is one of those sites where after reading a post or two, you just want to see what's the story behind it. There are a ton of sites that get into fashion tips or decorating your house in a more European style. But Audrey Michelle knew that when she started Larryuricana, she wanted it to be more than just that.
Obviously, it's my love of Europe, specifically Paris. So that was the inspiration, but I think there was a little bit more of reaching for something deeper, to finding some kind of sense of contentment about where I am now in my life and what I'm doing.
And at this point, her life is almost a 180 from just a few years ago.
Coming from a life of having a husband who has traveled all over the world as a sound engineer, working for various artists, and then me tagging along with him. I saw a lot of the world that way. We both did at basically less than half the price because obviously his fare, his airfare and all that, hotels were paid for by the companies that he worked for. And so all I basically had to do was pay for my plane ticket.
While it was fun and exciting, there were some downsides to life on the road.
To be honest with you, I was very excited when my husband took his first job as a touring sound engineer, and it was with Queen Latifah. And that was a great tour because Latifah would be in one city for 4 days, I think, and do her shows, and then she'd have like 4 days off or almost a week off in the same city. So I was able to fly out and meet him at different cities and still spend some quality time with my husband. So that was a great tour. And I thought, hey, this is great. I can live with this. But then not too long after that, he took another tour. And this is with Lady Gaga. And this was right before she blew up. So he went off to start touring with her. And at first her schedule was decent, you know, a little bit more busy than Latifah, but decent. But then she blew up in the middle of his tour with her. And then it was like, I'm looking at his calendar and he was going to be gone for a year, basically.
With her own career, the two of them worked around this crazy schedule as best they could.
The way we kind of dealt with that was to just get me out there as much as possible, which is what I did.
But after a while, things started to change, and so did the conversations between the two of them.
All this time, I was just like, we've got to find something else. This isn't working for me. Of course, my husband was having the time of his life. Here he is, you know, touring all over the world, living the rock star life. And, you know, he doesn't have to deal with a nagging wife at home telling him to do, you know, clean his room or his office and stuff like that. Of course, he was loving it. So for the longest time, the discussions were, when are you coming off the road? And of course, the reply was, I'm never going to do that. This is my dream job. You're going to have to live with it. So like I said, the way we eventually dealt with that was just get me out there as much as possible. So that made it easier. So I'm telling you this because now he's a little older. I'm a little older, and now he wants to transition coming off the road. He's tired. I get it, because a lot of those guys I have seen who have been on the road for a while, you look at them and it's just like, you at some point you see your future and reality hits you and you're like, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? So he's transitioning out of that.
As you probably know, the process isn't always smooth. For one thing, their income dropped, which meant they had to be more aware and careful with their finances.
How are we going to move from what he was earning as a sound engineer to what he will be earning in his next endeavor? So there's that element of fear and uncertainty, and how do we work that out? And of course, this period of transition is the worst, because it's like he's not doing as much of the sound engineering. And in the meantime, while he's in school, he hasn't quite moved into his new endeavor yet, right? So it's now we're having to budget, where before, frankly, we never really had to think about a budget. So those have been the discussions we've been having lately. And sometimes, to be honest with you, they're not so fun, because it's frustrating, because here's a man who's just used to being, like I said, treated like a rock star. And then me, I've always been more budget conscious, but at the same time, yeah, I think I got a little bit comfortable and spoiled along the way as well.
When we face something significant, even if it's positive or something that we really want, it can be difficult, especially when you're in the middle of it. So the two of you have to work through it in a way that reflects you guys. Don't worry about how quickly someone else made a career switch. Remember, when you compare yourselves with others, you don't get any real benefits, only headaches. For Audrey and her husband, part of this process means taking it step by step.
The goal is basically just to get through the month. I have to look at it that way, because if I start to think, or we both have to look at it that way, because if we start to think about, okay, what are we going to do, whatever in June and July, what's it going to be like in September? It's hard to deal with. It's too overwhelming. So we're taking it month by month, as far as budgeting and saving as much as we can. And yeah, that's pretty much how we're approaching it. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm not sure if it's even the best way to approach things. A lot of people say you need to start planning for the future. But at this point in our life, it's like, in order to just get through it, we have to take it in increments.
Finding contentment has been a challenge at times, as the two figure out their niches in this new season of their lives. One of Audrey's passions is writing. So Le Huracana has been an outlet for her to share some of their travel adventures, but also gives her a connection to that European sensibility to enjoy and savor the moment. That includes appreciating what they do have now.
You just appreciate what you have. You have to take the time to sit down and not think about what you can lose or what you maybe have already lost, whether it's materially or, whatever hobby you really like to do that, like traveling, that costs a lot of money sometimes, although, there are great sites out there for budget traveling. But you have to really sit down and meditate on the things that you have. So for me, finding that contentment is, I'm finally going to be able to enjoy a life with my husband who's going to come home every day. And appreciating, hey, I can actually make a dinner for him and he's going to be home at a certain time to eat it, instead of saying, because sometimes with his sound engineering job, even if obviously we're in California, so Los Angeles, there's a lot of local things to do too, although his job takes him out of the state most of the time. Occasionally he gets to stay in town. Even with that, you don't know, he gets called in for a rehearsal and, next thing you know, the artist decides they're not going to show up until 11 o'clock at night. And then that's when the day begins. But he's been there since 9 in the morning. So things like that. So I guess, the old adage, counting your blessings. That's how I find contentment, is just trying to look at the positive in everything.
Special thanks to Audrey for coming on the show. Finding contentment isn't always easy, but I'm happy to hear they are working through this together. If you want to find out more about Audrey and her journey before the next episode, please check out Le Eurocana. It's a great site. There's some wonderful tips on bringing European flair in your life. And on that note, next episode, Audrey's going to share how she's able to have that sense of fun and romance in their lives without breaking the bank. So if you don't want to miss out, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. It's free and easy. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and more. You can also grab the feed off our site directly so you can listen to the show from whatever podcast service app you prefer. And if you enjoy the podcast and find it helpful, could you please leave a review? It takes about a minute, but it's a huge help and would get the word out on Couple Money. I'd like to help others build up their marriage and their finances. Thanks again for listening. Hope you have a great week. Take care.